Hello and welcome to today's webinar. I am Trevor Smith-Miller, Communications Manager with the Canadian Cancer Survivor Network. Thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. This is our second one of the fall series for the 2023 season. If you're new to our webinar series, a little background on our group. CCSN is an organization working with cancer patients and survivors to learn about the complexity of our health system, connect with others to plan action, and act on those plans to create better outcomes and healthy survivorship. Please visit our website to find plenty of information like news, events, and of course, our webinar series. Now, this webinar is being recorded and will be available on YouTube, and a link will be provided by the email that you registered with, along with a link to the slides provided with this presentation. At the very end of the presentation, we will have a quick Q&A session, but if you would like, there is a chat function on GoToWebinar, and you can put your questions in that box, and we will get to them at the end of the chat. Now, on September 26th, we had two advocacy days take place on the same time, Mesothelioma Awareness Day and World Environmental Health Day. And so in the spirit of those 2 days, I am pleased to introduce two members of Prevent Cancer Now, Dr. Meg Sears and Julian Branch. Meg Sears, PhD, is the chair of the board of Prevent Cancer Now. She was trained in chemical engineering and applied chemistry at the University of Toronto and biochemical engineering at McGill, where she got her PhD, and has a diverse laboratory experience, including energy research, with skills in scientific analysts and writing. She later gained associations with medical researchers. Now, Julian J. Branch comes from a background in journalism and strategic communications. His interest in these areas led him to take a close look at the millions of kilometers of old asbestos cement water pipes around the world and the issue of ingesting asbestos. And so without any further ado, I'd like to give the floor to Meg and Jay for their talk, Tough to Swallow, a discussion of asbestos cement drinking water supply pipes.
Well, thank you so much, Trevor, for your generous offer to join you today. We're absolutely delighted. Prevent Cancer Now wishes that you could be out of business, to tell you the truth. So we are totally focused on preventing cancer, stopping it before it starts. So we're scientific, we're heavily scientifically based, and we offer on our website, healthy choices, things that you can do better. We recognize that there are toxic exposures, and so we keep track of things like pesticides, and we'll be telling you today about asbestos that can be shed from old asbestos cement water pipes. And we're very heavily guided by science, so we're very science-based. And I'm going to pass it over to Julian, who has been delving into this as only a journalist could do. And we'll play tag team through this process.
Thank you, Meg. And again, thank you to Trevor and the Canadian Cancer Survivor Network for allowing us to have this opportunity today. Just a quick bit onto my background, if I may, before I begin talking about the pipes. I am trained as a journalist. I spent 25 years in that profession. Then I moved into strategic communications, where I worked as the director of communications for 3 provincial premiers. I finished my career in the post-secondary communications sector. And I just want to put that out there because what that background provided me was a unique ability to cut through BS. Journalism is based on facts, not supposition, not hearsay, not conspiracy theories. I deal in facts. That's where my research is based, in fact. And everything I'm about to tell you this morning or this afternoon is easily verifiable. When I was looking into this group, I saw on your masthead on Twitter page a quote from a cancer survivor. And it says, being well informed and engaged is an important part of the battle against cancer. That's why Meg and I are here today, to inform you and hopefully to engage with you. I discovered this issue in 2012 while researching a related topic. And once you see something like this, you can't unsee it. So before I talk about the pipes, let me give you just a bit of background on the pipes themselves. The asbestos cement pipe process, or the asbestos cement process, was developed around 1900 by an Italian fellow. By the 1930s, it had been discovered that the pipes were extremely useful, acting as a reinforcement, a binding agent for the cement. It holds that cement together. The National Research Council studies will tell you that the pipes contain up to 20% asbestos on the interior of those pipes. They are sometimes referred to as transite. That is the trade name given to the pipes. And a lot of people refer to them simply as AC. Asbestos cement pipes still deliver water to millions of people around the world. Just to give you an idea, North America, 15 to 18% of the water distribution pipes in North America are asbestos cement. They are in Europe, they are in the UK, they are in the Caribbean, Australia, New Zealand. These pipes are truly around the world. The estimated lifespan of asbestos cement pipes is 50 to 70 years. And that high end, the 70-year lifespan, was provided by the Chrysotile Institute. And the Chrysotile Institute, or the Chrysotile Institute, is the lobby arm of the asbestos industry. The lifespan of the pipes actually depends on the hardness of the water, the aggressive nature of the water going through the pipe, or the aggressive nature of the water surrounding the pipe. So let's talk about the history of how we got to be where we are today. The actual first known case of asbestos in water does not involve the pipes. It involves the Reserve Mining Company. It was a large mining company that began dumping asbestos-contaminated iron ore tailings into Lake Superior in 1955. By the 1960s, people living on Lake Superior noticed there was something wrong with the water. Tests were done, and it was found that asbestos fibers were contaminating Lake Superior near Duluth, Minnesota. You've heard of the Environmental Protection Agency in the United States. That came to be in 1970. One of the very first and most important landmark environmental trials began in 1972, the EPA versus Reserve Mining Company. They wanted the mining company to stop dumping its tailings into Lake Superior, which was producing these asbestos fibers. And in 1974, at the conclusion of that trial, the Reserve Mining Company was ordered to stop dumping tailings into the lake. That launched 20 years, 2 decades of study by the EPA and other groups. So the next 20 years were devoted to studying asbestos in water. One of the key witnesses at the trial in 1973, 1974 was Dr. Irving Selikoff. Dr. Selikoff came from the Mount Sinai School of Medicine. He was the chief government witness for the EPA in that trial. And for decades, Dr. Selikoff had been highlighting the dangers of inhaling asbestos. In 1973, at the trial, he testified, in my opinion, the best explanation is ingestion, to explain the 2 to 3 times increase in the incidence of death from gastrointestinal cancer among occupationally exposed workers. Now, it's interesting, 1973 was a different time. People weren't as familiar and comfortable with the media as they are now. Dr. Selikoff was an exception. He was out front and outspoken and very blunt and loved chatting with the media. And in a 1973 Associated Press interview, while the trial was underway, Dr. Selikoff told the media there is a distinct public health hazard present in Duluth and in other populations by drinking the water and using it in other ways. The latency period, he pointed out, for asbestos-related diseases can be up to 40 years. And then he concluded by saying, to do nothing now would be to play a form of Russian roulette, and we don't know where the bullet is. Those are the sorts of things that Dr. Selikoff would talk about in the media. So you can see how this case generated a lot of interest around the world. So it didn't take long for environmental groups to realize that hundreds of thousands of miles of asbestos cement pipe had been installed across America in the decades previous. In 1973, the Center for Science and the Public Interest, a well-known environmental group in the United States, wrote a letter to the head of the EPA requesting a ban of asbestos cement pipe. As I've stated, there are already and the letter does point out there were 200,000 miles of AC pipe already serving consumers. The letter called on the EPA to, quote, take prompt action to eliminate the use of asbestos cement pipe for drinking water supply. That letter was CC'd to several senators and congressmen. It would take years for the EPA to act on asbestos cement water pipes. So the studies began. One of the first papers was produced by the American Academy of Pediatrics, and they published carcinogens in drinking water. And when it came to asbestos, the paper said this: there appears to be no doubt that there is an increased frequency of human gastrointestinal cancer after occupational exposures, presumably from asbestos that has been swallowed. That was 1976. Those were doctors saying that, yes, there's likely a problem when you swallow asbestos. But it was the EPA that really looked into this issue, and huge, voluminous reports over the next 20 years. I can't go through them all, but I will point out some of the highlights. In 1979, the EPA produced exposure to asbestos from drinking water in the US. The first thing the EPA wanted to determine was how much asbestos is in the drinking water in America. Well, of the 365 cities surveyed, more than 45%, almost half, were reported to have significant concentrations of asbestos in the drinking water. By the way, the EPA measures asbestos in water in millions of fibers per liter, MFL, and that's important to remember. So, Duluth, Minnesota, the site of that Lake Superior concern in the court case, the fiber count up to 644 million fibers per liter. In Bishopville, South Carolina, 547 MFL, and the probable source was asbestos cement pipe. Socorro, New Mexico, was found to have up to 2 billion fibers of asbestos per liter. So there was a lot of asbestos in American drinking water back in the late 70s. Now, the next thing the EPA wanted to determine was, we have a lot of asbestos in the water. Is it dangerous to drink it? Well, in 1980, the EPA produced ambient water quality criteria for asbestos, an almost 200-page report, very detailed, very specific. What did it find? Asbestos is a known carcinogen when inhaled. Asbestos is likely to be a human carcinogen when ingested, given the ability of asbestos to induce malignant tumors in different animal tissues, the passage of ingested fibers through the human gastrointestinal mucosa, and other cancers as a result of asbestos exposure. So yes, the evidence was slowly building that ingested asbestos was harmful to human health. Now, this is interesting. In 1983, the head of the EPA Water Division was a fellow by the name of Joseph Gatruvo. And he produced a commentary, what was known as a commentary. And he began by saying, in the past, there was some question regarding the potential danger of ingesting asbestos. And then he finished by saying, the issue has ripened considerably since then. He found that the issue of asbestos in drinking water is similar to most environmental contamination issues. There's never an absolute, unequivocal yes or no. Asbestos research has produced more hard data than research topics, leading him to conclude, therefore, I believe we will be able to make a good decision based on the current facts. So in 1985, the Federal Register. Now, the Federal Register is a record of all important decisions of the United States government. And the November 13th, 1985 edition of the Federal Register says that on that day, the EPA had to make a decision. Do we regulate asbestos in water, or do we choose not to? The EPA chose to regulate asbestos in water, and it outlined why. Asbestos has been shown to be a human carcinogen through inhalation exposure, and asbestos may be associated with an increased risk of gastrointestinal cancer through occupational exposure. So it said it was going to introduce a recommended maximum contaminant